Do you ever get asked by friends, family, patients, and peers, is there any evidence based acupuncture research? I have the answer for you today. You are going to love my guest. His name is Sandro Graca. And if you don't know Sandro, where have you been? He's all over social media sharing all the research that has been done on acupuncture. And what you're going to love about this conversation is that he is very curious. He loves to be challenged, and he is such a wealth of knowledge and information. And we talked about the future of acupuncture and how we have to view research now, not about how does acupuncture work? We know it works, but how can it help? What does it help? What disorder does it treat? That's where the research is going towards. And that's what we need as practitioners to share with patients and peers and friends and family so they can see the evidence, because acupuncture is definitely evidence based. I'm so happy that Sandro has agreed to be on the podcast. You are going to love this. I'm not going to let you wait any longer. Let's rock it.
Welcome to AcuPro, a show dedicated to making Chinese medicine and acupuncture easy to grasp and fun to learn. Hi, I'm your host, Clara Cohen. I support practitioners and students, and like you, in changing the world one patient at a time. My goal is to share my passion for TCM and empower you to achieve superior patient care. I love to showcase the amazing benefits of acupuncture because, after all, acupuncture rocks.
Welcome, Sandro Graca. I love your name. I've seen you so many times online. We've never met in person, and I hope that one day we do and I come to Ireland or you come back to Canada, because I know you've been in Vancouver and you've been here for conferences in the past as well. So I am so grateful you came in today to the AcuPro show to share your wisdom, your knowledge, and your amazing work. I'm like so in awe, just like blown away by you. So I have so many questions, and I'm sure I won't be the only one. So I'm going to try to keep it in a way that everybody can learn more about you, but also get lots of actionable tips and wisdom and knowledge from who you are. So thank you. I'm so grateful. Welcome, Sandro.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel like I should just leave now and not disappoint anyone with my conversation. We've been in touch for so many years. Let's not say how many years, just make us sound old. But yeah, I feel like I see you all the time online, and it's a pleasure.
I feel like we met because you have a Facebook group that I love that is very open. That's TCM around the world, which I love that because TCM has no boundaries and it's so cool. So that's how I started kind of being aware of you. And then you did more and more. And one of the things that I want to discuss with you is basically evidence based acupuncture. And we're going to talk about this and we'll have the link in the show notes. You're also a PCOS guy. So I have lots of question on that. You were born in Portugal, but you are in Ireland. Your English is perfect, not like mine. You do social media, you write, you are so well versed that when I look at your bio, I feel like, do you actually sleep?
Yeah, wearing all the hats. Can I just say something here now for anyone that is studying or starting their careers? It's interesting you say all that. I appreciate it and I'm thankful, but I really would like people listening to this that are beginning of their career or even just studying, that it doesn't happen just like that. It takes time. And I said the same thing about people that came before me, that I would never be like them. Look at all the things that they're doing, even in terms of research, for example. And the person that got me to do my master's degree and that really got me interested in research, unfortunately, is no longer with us, Professor Hugh McPherson. I mentioned these comments with one of my colleagues where I teach. She's like, students say the same thing about you. It's easy for you because you do all these things and you know all this. I'll never be like that. But you can do it. I don't take it lightly about the not sleeping joke. It's never a secret to anyone, but there are things that, for example, family would do, or that you would take more time for yourself or for your family. And that's my decision. I ended up not doing things that way. And that's because I really love what I do. And that's how I got to meet amazing people from all over the world like yourself. So it's a trade-off. And just make sure that you really enjoy what you're doing, and that you're doing it for a purpose, and just be happy with your life.
I love it. I think that's fantastic because that's exactly it. If you're passionate about something, that's your purpose. And your purpose is to bring forward so many things, which we're going to talk about. But I wanted to take you back to the beginning. So you were obviously born in Portugal, you live there, you speak Portuguese. First of all, how did you end up in Ireland? And how did you end up going to TCM college and education, and why?
So I started studying acupuncture and TCM still in Portugal. I did the first semester, and the opportunity of, funnily enough, I joke about this, and in my defense, it was 2003, so internet and social media weren't like they are now. And so how I ended up in Ireland was because of really bad research on my part. I was studying TCM in Lisbon, and this opportunity came about of moving, and I always thought about moving, and I loved reading, and it got to a point in TCM school where I was like, these books in English have a lot of information. Maybe if I could get a career there and I could study there as well. So there was always that inclination of going to a country where I could speak English. And I was going to go to London because I had family there. And I didn't really like the idea of that many people because, I was already a little bit claustrophobic in Lisbon and thinking that I was going to go to a city that had even more people. So I asked around, and I remember being given the option of places where I could study acupuncture, but with that background of TCM as well. And I was given two options. One was in Edinburgh, and I did not do due diligence and research because I thought, ooh, it sounds really up north and cold. I'll try Dublin, which is also very cold as well. I ended up going and visit just to see what it was like, and I fell in love. I could already speak a little bit of English, obviously being immersed. We're talking about this being 20 years ago, right? So obviously with the amount of Guinness that you drink, you get your English and with a little bit of Irish accent as well. And all joking aside, I went to that college that I was recommended in Dublin. Acupuncture changed my life, and it did because I met Siobhan, my partner, in acupuncture school. So, of course, I was going to stay in Dublin.
That's awesome. It's interesting that you had the choice between Edinburgh and Dublin. And of course, both of them are north. And I've never been to Ireland. It's on my list, but I've been to Scotland and I've been to Edinburgh. I absolutely loved it. I love that city. I had so much fun. So I can't wait to one day come to Ireland and to come to Dublin. But what I'm still impressed by the fact that you don't have any accent when you speak English, even though you said, well, you had no choice. A few Guinness. I've had Guinness. It doesn't make my French accent go away. I can tell you that.
That means you need to drink more. Right now, where I am, as we were talking about it before the show and saying that I have two homes. So I am now full time at the university in the UK in Wolverhampton, which is West Midlands. And I go back and forth, but I spend most of my time here. And people in Dublin say to me, are you okay there? And I'm like, it is pretty much like Dublin. It's green. It could be Dublin. It's a part of my life that I'm in a different place now, but it's a discovery and getting to know the new places. And yeah, I love it and just get intertwined with the culture as well.
It's interesting because, like I said, I've always liked you online. I don't know you, but the more we're speaking, the more I'm like, you could be my TCM brother. It's just crazy because I'm exactly the same way. I like to try new things. Doesn't matter if I'm in my 50s or my 40s or my 30s. People always say, oh, I'm too old to start something new. But that's the challenge. When you challenge yourself, that's how you grow. That's how everything you start, you learn at the beginning, you're not very good. And then you learn. It's like TCM at the beginning, you know nothing. And it doesn't mean that you know everything 20 years later, but at least you have some experience and you've learned along the way and you grow with it. You're teaching, your practice is in Dublin, right? So you're going back and forth.
Yeah, so full disclosure, and sorry to disappoint you and everyone, I'm not practicing anymore. I'm a full-time researcher now, and I still call it our practice is in Dublin, yes. And Siobhan has been really super successful, been able to actually take over the full floor on the medical place where the clinic is, as we speak, being expanded. And it's been phenomenal. I'm going to be jumping here, but particularly after coming back from China. So we went to China in 2009 And when we came back, we really got interested in menstrual reproductive health while we were there. And it was just at that time when things were getting really busy with IVF clinics as well. And because of being in Dublin, where the clinics, it just made our clinics and the business really busy, and us getting a name and people come to see us. She's still in practice. The clinic still exists since the beginning of 2020. With the pandemic, I ended up not going back to clinic because just of opportunities with research. And even at that stage, was like a part-time researcher and going to Siobhan's clinic and helping out and having other things that I was doing. But now officially here at the university, I am a researcher.
I think it's really interesting because a lot of people practice for a long time and then eventually they continue practicing, but some people have the thirst for more and for other opportunities. So I think that is a great way to talk about evidence based acupuncture. So I want you to take me
Mhm.
back to when that started, and I'll have the link in the show notes for everybody. But if you don't know this website, evidence based acupuncture, you have to, because the work that's put into it is amazing for us practitioners to be able to share the studies and the research that's in here with the world so we can show that yes, acupuncture is evidence based. So I want you to take me back. How did that started? Where is that going? And the fact that you're passionate about this, I want to thank you, first of all, grateful that you started this, but explain to us, how did that happen?
I didn't start it, the EBA project. Around 2015, a medical doctor, I know, right? A medical doctor who is a great acupuncturist as well, decided to start evidence based acupuncture. And the reason why it's called that is I'm already laughing. People will know because there's already evidence based medicine with all its issues, and nothing is perfect in this, know that. But there's a play on words, right? There's evidence based medicine, so why shouldn't there be evidence based acupuncture? So his name is Bartosz Mielnicki. He's from Poland, and he's a medical doctor to start with, and then he trained as an acupuncturist as well, and he's a phenomenal acupuncturist. And it's interesting because I remember reading something that he wrote at the time about people going into his office. So imagine this as a GP or as an MD, and you would tell someone, not everyone, but when appropriate, you would say you should get acupuncture, and I would recommend you to go and get acupuncture. And people would say, "Oh, acupuncture, do you believe in that?" I'm paraphrasing here his story. He used to say that he would get annoyed at that because it was like, belief. It's a medical intervention. It either works or it doesn't work. It's not religion. It's nothing to do with belief. So he started evidence based acupuncture around 2015. And to be honest, at the time, the website was mainly in Polish because that was his language. And he was using Google Translate to put it into English. Things moved on in 2016. He got really involved in putting together the project that eventually became his big school. It's one of those things that warms my heart to see that within our community there's people like this. So it wasn't like, oh, it's my baby, I created this, so it's mine. It was like, I can't do it, I want someone else to take over the baby and allow the baby to grow. And I actually remember when the conversation happened that he contacted someone who was Mel Hoppelman to take
Mhm.
over EBA. This was in Rothenburg, so around May of 2016, and I joined EBA officially in September of 2016. And that's the way that it then developed from then on. We always pay great respect to Bartosz, and to this day we see each other in conferences and everything. And there was one time I was thinking about when I said about calling it his baby, and at one conference I was presenting and he was in the audience, and I said, talked about evidence-based acupuncture, and that was his baby. And he actually put his hand up and he said, yeah, but the baby is now a child and growing and walking, and you're the one holding the hand and moving. And I was like, oh, that's a good analogy. When Mel decided to having different projects on, and with me continuing, and I love a team. So we got someone else to take over as executive director, Lara McClure. Can I just say, by the way, it exists because of people like you and everyone else supporting EBA through their donations and membership. We make it through donations. EBA Connect is what we call it. And those people that are donating and supporting us are really the ones that keep the project going.
And you're absolutely right, because when he was saying, oh, when patients say, do you believe in acupuncture, right? There are still people in the world that will say that to practitioners. And when you're a new practitioner and you come out of school, you don't quite know what to say. And you're like, yes, of course I do, but you don't know how to explain it. So the patient understand where you're coming from. So having at least something that you can send patients and say, hey, look at this research that shows XYZ. Look at, today the research shows for pain or for dysmenorrhea or whatever the subject is. And I think that's very helpful to new practitioners because they don't have the capacity to be able to answer that question, and they feel like the deer in the headlight, kind of thing. Who goes and found all those studies? Where do you found them? Who does the research? It must take hours.
Well, to be honest, throughout time, we get more and more people that sometimes just message us and say, hey, have you seen this? So for me, obviously having the filters online and knowing when there's a new paper that comes out, I think that the main thing is searching for the papers. And you mentioned this already. There's a lot of research out there. Like, I mean, a lot. Okay. When I'm writing papers, I will always respect the lineage where we come from. And the previous editor-in-chief of the Journal of Integrative and Complementary Medicine, John Weeks, said to me in 2018 at our own conference, he said, Sandro, the research is out there, but who's reading it? And I'll always remember those words. And it's true, there's a lot of information out there. What actually takes time, and bringing this to the educational space now, what takes time is to separate actually well done research that is interesting for clinical practice. From the very beginning, acupuncture is not different from any other medical expertise out there that has issues with research. You can name anything. So if you say that, oh, acupuncture has a problem with research because of placebo, so does exercise, so does psychology. So what's your big deal? Oh, it has because it's different when you're doing research in acupuncture and the interaction with a clinician. So does psychology, so does counseling. So I don't like hiding behind that. So when I say looking for research that is interesting within the huge amount that is out there, what takes time is picking something that is more pragmatic, that you read and you say, I can actually use some of this information in my clinic. Because if it's a very white coat type RCT where everything is super controlled and there's an inclusion exclusion criteria and you're only seeing this particular type of patient for that study, how can I replicate that in my clinic? Or even with the amount of treatments. I'll give you a practical example. Not that long ago at evidence-based acupuncture, we talked about a paper that was talking about acupuncture for endometriosis. And one of the issues that was discussed was the amount of treatments that those patients were getting. And they were getting treatment every day from the moment that they would get pain or that their menstruation would start. And I said, well, I couldn't do that in my clinic. Who's paying for this? Like, can they come? They're in pain. They might not even be able to move. Think about your typical endometriosis patient, probably in bed, holding a hot water bottle, really in pain. It was very interesting research. But the thing is, can I replicate that in my clinic? And the opposite works as well. I'm very into that. And the people that have read my papers, they know that I'm always pushing towards what you do in clinic. Can we replicate that? So again, it works both ways, and I don't like hiding behind any of those. So to answer your question, what takes time is to read them and pick which ones to post. But I just take it reading them as knowledge and information. I just love doing it.
I love that you shared about the fact that so many people will say, well, there's no research out there, because I get this on my social media pages all the time. Some people come in and they'll write, oh, this is BS. There's no research about acupuncture. Nothing is proven, blah, blah. So I always say that exactly this. I'm like, oh, you've read all the internet, the millions of websites and all the research on the internet in every language possible. And that's how you know there's no research. And I'm thinking, how arrogant of you to say there's no research. There are so much done in other countries as well, or in other language that hasn't even been reached because it hasn't been translated, right? So I always think it's funny when people say there's no research. I'm like, oh, so you've read it all, right? Have you? Like, no, you haven't. Call Sandro. He's read all of them.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So my transition from clinic into research, what you've seen over the last few years overall with the amount of more and more research being published. And by the way, it's not just the amount of published research, the quality of those publications and that work that has been done has also increased over the last few decades. We now know that from reading back and from analyzing those that you know that it's getting better and better. And one of the things that I say about my transition is that even, I'm new in the research field, people asking me, for example, like they were asking you, oh, research in acupuncture, oh, is that to find out if it works? And I'm like, no, we're actually studying how it works, where we've really moved on from the does it work to the how does this work and how does that work and what if we change this and what if we do this and what if for this type of patient and what in combination with other things. So it's really going beyond the premise of does it work to now we're really optimizing the fact that it works and optimizing in different populations for different conditions in conjunction with other things. And more you're seeing that, in particular in my field with polycystic ovary syndrome, where there's this big push towards disciplines working together. There is that road of research in terms of really finding out how we can work together with other interventions as well.
I think that's a great segue because I wanted to talk to you about PCOS or polycystic ovarian syndrome. My audience and people that listen to what I have to share are often either students or new practitioners or practitioners that, have left and come back. So one of the things I wanted to ask you, because I know you went deep treating PCOS and fertility, obviously around PCOS as well. So my first question, then we can talk about PCOS, but a lot of new practitioners are worried about focusing on something because they think they're going to alienate everybody else and it's just too narrow. But you went narrow. You went PCOS, not just fertility, but PCOS and fertility, which is very narrow and is very needed because a lot of patients have been diagnosed with PCOS. Lots of women have been, dealing with this. So what would you say to new practitioners or students that want to focus but are worried that this is obviously they can't focus on something right away because they need to learn more about it and it's going to be probably a natural development, but a lot of them are still scared to kind of go say, oh, I'm really interested in doing this but I'm so worried? What would you say?
I would say that I would also love to do other things other than just narrow it down, but there's no time. It comes down to expertise, comfort within yourself, and you really have to commit the time, the hours, and more about it. If you spread yourself too thin and you try to learn about everything, like we were talking about the amount of research that there is out there and the amount of books and the different schools and the different conditions. And so, how much time do you have to learn all this? I really want to stay away from stating the obvious here and be really zen and say that it will find you when the time is right. But to be honest, that's what happened to me because my focus, I told you, was actually most of our work was with IVF patients. And honestly, to this day, people ask me, where does PCOS come from, in your career? And I was like, well, I was treating IVF patients coming from the IVF clinic, referred to by the consultants or by the nurses, and they would come to my clinic and they were like, oh, the consultant says I have PCOS. And my brain is very simple, and that just did not match. I was like, hang on a minute. The IVF clinic says you have PCOS. That should have been your gynecologist. And I just got interested in why was there more of this conversation happening in my clinic that they didn't know they had anything. They were just trying. It's not happening. They go to the IVF clinic and the consultant says, oh, you have PCOS. And I was like, I need to find out more about this. So I didn't pick it. It found me. You have to pick like your main field and you stay there. So menstrual and reproductive health. But the final click to go from really focusing on IVF to focusing on PCOS happened in Canada. So you'll be really proud to know that I will always remember Canada and two people from Canada. That was Dr. Kayla McIsaac and Dr. Fiona McCullough. And I remember being at the IFS symposium, and there was just something that I was like, I want to know more about this. I'm thinking about Fiona, and I'm like, the last time that I was talking to her on the phone was about inositols for PCOS. And she was like, oh, congratulations on the paper. It's great. We need this information, whatever. And I'm like, it's nothing to do with acupuncture. It's to do with inositol, it's to do with PCOS, it's to do with the guidelines that were much needed. And this is the update on the guidelines. And I remember again from my laughing and joking with people, I said to her, look at what you've done. This is all your fault. And she's like, yeah, but you have to do the work and it's great. And look at you now. There has been work done by me in PCOS that has nothing to do with acupuncture. But you have to know how to work as a team and being able to help others as well, that not just focus solely on acupuncture and live by it. Just get in. It's medicine. You need to help people. But yeah, don't stress about it. Find your field. If you like menstrual health, reproductive health, find your field first, and then eventually it'll just click for you.
I always say, you can either really focus on something you lived. Let's say you've had thyroid health issue for your whole life, so you might go towards it, or something you love, right? And it's either one or the other, and it's just going to be where you gravitate. And I just realized you came to Vancouver to the Fertility Symposium, and I think I was there that year too. So we didn't meet, but apparently you were there and I was there, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So that's the first thing I want to share. And the second thing I want to share is I didn't know anything about inositol, and my practice for 20 years is focused on fertility, women's disorders in general, and fertility a lot. And that the inositol, I did not know about it, and I got awareness from it. So what you did is you changed the whole perspective of PCOS patients would benefit really well from taking inositol. And it's just like so good, because you're right, it has nothing to do with acupuncture. However, as practitioners, we have taken an oath to help our patient the best of our ability. And if it's to tell them to change their diet to a certain way, or just do acupuncture, or do acupuncture and herbs or supplements, or whatever we're doing, we're trying to help them to reach their goal, which often is to be pregnant and conceive and have a baby. So again, thank you. Look at you. You don't even know. This is the whole point of this. You have no idea the impact you have when you do things, because you're just passionate. And that's the best way, because you're curious, you want to know something, and then you share, and ta-da, everybody benefits.
Feeling pressure here now. But since you were saying that there are possibly students listening to this, or even, again, it doesn't really matter, like anyone starting their career or either mid-career is fine. I get that question at times where people are interested in research, but they don't know how to start or where to go. And because they're studying and it's very practical and they're learning a profession, and there may or may not be that research component. And the question is, how do I start? Where do I go? What should I do? What's your best tip? And I don't really have one, because as I just told you, everything was very organic. It wasn't that I had a plan or that I was following a structure by any means. But what I always say is, find someone, a researcher, someone who's writing that you really like their style. And then just boom, all the stuff that clicked for me, and Fiona's book, reading more about her work, and even what really got me into research, as I mentioned before, Professor Hugh McPherson, it was reading his stuff, and I liked the style. So it wasn't a chore to sit down and to read that stuff or to learn more about it. It was a good experience for me. It wasn't something that I had to do. That would be my advice. Find someone that resonates for you, that you like their style, their writing, something that makes it easier for you to get going, and then just see where it goes.
I so agree, because for me, it's Yvonne Farrell. I love Yvonne Farrell,
Yeah.
and I just can learn and soak from her. Just anything she has to say, I'm like, my eyes are wide open and my ears are like, I'm taking millions of notes, and I feel like I want to be in her brain. And so I totally get it. When you click and you resonate with someone, that's who you should gravitate to learn more from, right? Because we can continue as we grow in our profession, we continue to learn. My question for you is, where do you see, since you're going into full-on research, where do you see acupuncture research leading to in the next few years in the future?
Ooh, that is a $1 million question. Well, first and foremost, we really need to continue and get better and better all the time working together because again, I don't claim to be an expert on anything, and even within PCOS, there's so much more that I need to learn and need to work and all that. But the models of care we see that I've been involved with, the guidelines and everything, it's pretty much teamwork and it's multidisciplinary work. I don't see it as being just a simple study of acupuncture only for condition X. Rather, where does acupuncture fit in? Back pain, yeah, you can get acupuncture, but you will probably also benefit from some exercise. If it's something to do with your stomach, digestive system, whatever, yeah, you'll benefit from acupuncture, but you'll also benefit from some dietary advice. And that's what it is, finding your place within the team. And no disrespect, but not so much as you alone in your clinic doing acupuncture isolated from the whole. You mentioned the groups that I'm involved with. I'll put on a different hat now and talk about the Hospital Handbook Project, and which now recently changed name, but it's basically in the US acupuncturists that already work within the hospital setting. As I said to you, there's a paper going through peer review that I spearheaded as evidence-based acupuncture. Lara was my co-author as well, and we picked 3 other co-authors from different parts of the world so that it wasn't just the US, and even different languages as well, to show that there is acupuncturists working in a hospital setting in different parts of the world, in different settings of oncology and musculoskeletal and stuff like that. And that is where I see more and more of this integration and implementation, where we find and we help others to find that spot where acupuncture belongs and within the whole healthcare system of a particular country.
That's a great answer, because the patient will require more than one thing most of the time, because we see a lot of chronic patients with a lot of chronic disorders. I've been practicing since 2003, and we all have people we refer to. I have the chiropractor that I refer to, that, the patients, I could see you need alignment, right? I have the naturopathic doctor who can do all the testing and who can do vitamin injection. I have the counselor that can help you when there's a lot of trauma, right? So you're right, we're part of an integrative whole and part of a whole medical system, and seeing it more and more in hospital, or like battlefield acupuncture, or acupuncture in the States that's done for vets, for veterans. A lot of dentists use acupuncturists. There's also veterinarians that are treating animals that have acupuncturists for the animals as well. So it is coming in part of a system. And I think that's a great answer to see where this is going, because it's a very positive way of looking at it. And it's a way of looking at it as a whole. Integrative, like that's the word, integrative. It's
Yep.
We are integrating everything in order to help people that are suffering, and it's not just one thing. I really appreciate your answer. I actually think it's spot on.
I don't know about other fields, but I know that there could be people listening to this and saying, well, it's easy for you to say that in your field and to be super optimistic about the future and talking about integration, because it is very patient driven in my field. So when it comes to IVF or assisted reproductive technology, anything to do with menstrual health, endometriosis have very strong patient advocacy. So does PCOS. It's very much patient driven. And I don't know, but I would love to learn from other fields if they are also patient driven. I will just acknowledge that I speak about integration and all this bright future ahead, because when you were saying about including everyone, that including everyone actually means including the patient as well. And in PCOS guidelines, again, the full international guidelines for assessment and management of PCOS, the patients were actually part of that work. And I could see the benefits from that. So the reason why I'm highlighting this is, first, there's a strong advocacy from patients driving things forward. And what this means is that there could be 50 consultants saying that they don't believe in acupuncture or whatever, but the patients are still going and they're saying, we're going and we're getting benefits from it. That was so refreshing for me to see throughout the work too. So I would really advise practitioners to find those patient groups and make sure that they are, first, that they are involved in these decisions being made, and I mean the patients, and also that the acupuncturists start to be part of that world as well, so that they have a voice.
In British Columbia, Canada, we have one one insurance company for car accident or for having insurance to drive a car, right? We only have one insurance company. We have no choice. We got to go with those people. So, because of advocacy from patients and practitioners, 3 years ago now, the insurance company is now covering acupuncture for car accidents for 12 session right after your accident. So it is now patient and practitioners driven,
Yeah.
because now it is covered completely 100%. They don't have to pay anything, and they can get physiotherapy, acupuncture, massage therapy, counseling. All this is under the umbrella of the insurance company when you are suffering from the shocking and the trauma from the car accident. And I think that's the future, is that patients and practitioners are showing advocacy, and then things are changing for the better.
One of the reasons you mentioned earlier about telling patients to go to the evidence-based acupuncture website, we always had these like three-way communication going, where when we are writing something, we are thinking about who is our audience, and we think about, obviously, the public. We think about other clinicians, could be acupuncturists, could be MDs, could be anything. And we also have the other aspect of healthcare policymakers. So it has to be a language that everyone is comfortable with, because we know that it's adjusting the language and making everyone comfortable with it and having something that they can learn from it. And the goal there being that learning, that education, that could and should be happening in your own clinic, in your own practice as well, is to make sure that patient leaves your clinic, and whenever they go to another appointment or talking to their local politician or talking to the health insurance, that they know what happened. I normally say when I'm teaching is that I heard this once and I said I never ever want to hear this again. And that is the patient leaving the acupuncture clinic and talking to a friend of theirs or family and saying, "Oh, I went for acupuncture." "Oh, acupuncture. What's that?" "I don't know. I just lied there and the person puts in needles and I feel better. I don't know." I said, do not ever let someone leave your clinic not knowing a little bit of what happened. You don't need to tell them everything about what you just did, but just educate them a little bit so that they are able to pass that information on. And you never know who they're going to pass it on to. They could pass it on to someone else that is going to come to your clinic, so that's fine. But they could also pass it on to their medical doctor, they could pass it on to their consultant, and more importantly, they can pass it on to a healthcare policymaker. And that eventually makes a big, big difference for everyone.
That's fantastic, because we have a consultation with a new patient and we ask them a bunch of questions, right? We're doing our whole consultation and question. And I always finish at the end and I always say, I've asked you a lot of questions. Your turn. What would you like to ask me? Because I think if you give that door open, then patients can say, well, how does it work? And how many sessions do I need? And what is going to happen? Where are you going to put the needles? And if they're not, because sometimes patients, like, they're shy and they're like, no, I don't have question. And then I'll say, well, I'm just going to explain a few things. And because it's really important. I so agree with you to educate the patients, because they are your best advocate, but they're also the best advocate for acupuncture. And like you said, wherever they're going to go, whomever they're going to talk to, they're going to talk about what they did. So
Yeah.
it would be a great way to send them out with some information. Plus, it's great education. They might want to learn more, and that's a great way. So I really appreciate you coming today because I think we could talk and talk forever, but I know you also have a life because you're so busy. Thank you so much, Sandro, for coming. And any final thoughts?
Any final thoughts? They're not final. They are work in progress, like we all are. And I would just say to anyone listening to this, it being a patient or being a student or being a practitioner already, just be curious. Never, ever accept something just because someone said so. Much like I do, I always joke and I say, you told me that you listened to other stuff that I put out there, but I always say, I say this to patients, by the way, don't trust what I'm saying. Just go and double check everything. I don't want to be the authority on anything. I want to spark that curiosity in you as a student, as a patient, as a colleague, that it's for your own benefit and we're all in this together and we all push and continue to learn more and more. So, yeah, I just want to say a big, big thank you for having me here. Learn new things and don't be afraid of research just because someone said it's boring. Don't trust them. If someone said that research is boring, why should you trust them? Read it. Find out information from research that you can use in your clinic, because that's really how I developed my clinic, particularly with IVF that was developing so quickly. So it was always my go-to in terms of learning new information. So don't be afraid of it and just challenge yourself and just ride a wave.
Ride the wave, be curious, and challenge yourself. I love that. Thank you, Sandro. If you ever want to come back and have more discussion, we could do that again.
I will just say this, and whoever is going to edit this, do not cut this bit, which is thank you for the amazing work that you do, because I'm serious. I feel like I see you every day because I go on social media and there's information, different platforms, and you're always out there educating everyone. And you do have that natural touch of educating not just clinicians, students, but also the public. And the work that you do is super, super important. So I want to say thank you for everything that you do for us. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And you know what? I edit this, so I won't take it out. I will keep it in because you made my day and I'm so grateful. But I think it's because you are my TCM brother and because I'm like you, I'm compassionate and I want to share and basically tell the whole world about how amazing Chinese medicine is and how it can help so many people. So, yeah, so I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I truly hope you benefited from this episode, and I would love for you to share it with a friend that may benefit from it as well. Follow the show, leave a review, and if you want more, go to my website, acuproacademy.com. I have tons of resources there with treatment protocols, case studies, free courses, and so much more. And connect with me on all social media at AcuPro Academy. I'm on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, X, Pinterest, and LinkedIn and TikTok. And no matter what, keep rocking it using TCM. Please listen to the disclaimer because the AcuPro Show podcast and material shared through AcuPro Academy, which is a subdivision of Natural Health Sense Incorporated, are designed solely for educational and entertainment purposes. The utilization of information from this podcast or any associated material is at the user's discretion and risk. This content is not meant to replace the guidance of an acupuncturist, Chinese medicine doctor, medical doctor, physician, or any qualified professional, nor is it a substitute for proper diagnosis or treatment. Users are strongly advised not to ignore or postpone seeking medical advice for any existing medical condition with their healthcare professional regarding any health concerns.